I'm part of the institutional business development team from Binance. We kind of center we kind of center our focus on liquidity, market maker, and high frequency trading volume that comes into the venue. Before Binance, I used to work for blockchain.com for about 3 years, widely known for their non-custodial wallet and their first Bitcoin explorer to be out there. So yeah, that's me.
Great. And I'll just quickly introduce myself so you know who I am. Dave Carr. I'm Director of Partnerships at Verse Digital, which is an organization that helps brands enter the metaverse and make sense of Web3, etc. I was previously at Parcel, which was a marketplace for virtual real estate, and before that at Decentralised as a marketing lead. So I'm referred to as part of the old guard, which sounds ridiculous, but that's apparently what I am. But let's jump into this topic, and I'm going to start with a very basic question, which is, what does bridging the gap between Web2 and Web3 mean for you guys? And give me specific examples related to your industries and your businesses, if you like.
So I was reading a really interesting book recently called Crossing the Chasm, and it's old. It was about crossing and bridging the gap from pre-internet to internet technologies and commerce. And so for me, I think we're just doing that same thing over again, and hopefully we're taking some of the lessons that we learned during the dot-com boom and applying them as we go along. So far, haven't been super impressed, but hopefully we will get a little bit better and learn from our history a little bit. But I think it's really, I think what people don't realize is just how the internet kind of permeates our everyday lives, just how we don't even realize when we're using it. Web3 is going to be the same way, and Metaverse is going to be the same way. So in, I don't know, I say maybe a decade, but it's probably going to be faster than that because things are moving just so quickly. Just like we all have phones in our pocket with Google and we just ask Siri to find the nearest restaurant, we don't realize that we're using the internet to do that. We're not going to realize that we're using blockchain-powered technologies, Web3 and Metaverse, to do just our daily actions that we need to do for work and for play.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the bridging the gap will have to do a lot with user experience and how do we kind of seamlessly introduce the Web3 into Web2. If you think about it, if you compare Web3 right now to what the industry in Web2 is, we're very early stage, we're very small compared to Google, Apple, these big companies, Facebook, for example. So I think for us to reach that mass adoption point for the industry, we'll have to make user experience very seamlessly. And I give you the example of the institutional business right now. So they're very traditional. They come from a very traditional background. They're used to make everything on paper, everything very, very correct. But when they come to a DeFi protocol where they have to, interact with a trustless network, things are complicated. So doing that in an easier way for everyone, including institutional players, I think it's where mass adoption will be the future.
And I think we'll know we're successful when people don't even realize that it's powered by a blockchain. Just like at Shopify, no one cares or knows that it's powered by Ruby on Rails. They just want it to work so they can run their business. It's going to be the exact same thing. Your mom's going to be using it, and you're going to be like, oh, that's this chain, and blah, blah, blah. And she's going to be like, I don't care. I just need to purchase these shoes.
Yeah, and well, going back to that as well, if you think about people using a non-custodial wallet. So I gave the example earlier, blockchain.com. My mom was proud, and she's like, I want to use a non-custodial wallet as well. And then I had to explain that to her. She never understood it. I had to keep the keys for her. And if you do that in a simpler way, then it should be for everyone. Web3 is for everyone. My mom has a Facebook. She uses it every day, but Web3 is not yet for everyone.
So your mum has the advantage in that she has a son who works in the industry, but for everybody else, at other events I've gone to, it's education is the biggest barrier for people to, firstly, obviously understand the metaverse, but to make that leap into this whole new ecosystem. So who's responsible for that? We talk about brands making mistakes by jumping in and doing something. Is it the agencies, the traditional agencies who put themselves up there as, we have the answers for the metaverse, we have a chief metaverse officer, or is it the platforms? Are there intermediaries that are going to help kind of bridge this gap? Who's responsible for,
Do you mean educating the brands or educating the consumers?
Well, everyone really. I mean, I guess, if a brand wants to reach either the existing community in Web3, or they want to bring people across, or just do anything that's going to increase revenue or what have you, then who's responsible for getting that education out there? Because from my perspective, I see brands. Some of the first conversations are effectively like, what can I do? Like, what is this and what can I do? So, who's responsible? Who's going to do the best job of educating brands and consumers by extension, I suppose?
Yeah, I can take that. So I think I'll give you the example of Facebook, for example, when they changed literally their name to Meta now. They spend billions of dollars into the Metaverse and their own platform. How can they build this around that? They lost a lot of money in the last few years regarding their operations on Metaverse. But I think it's a first step, right? So not just big companies like Facebook or Binance, which is mostly focused on the Web3. I think for us that are mostly focused on Web3, we should incentivize innovators, incentivize entrepreneurs that are building. And not everyone's going to succeed. There's going to be a lot of failure, but at some point we'll find that sweet spot in the industry, and mass adoption will come along.
I think that for brands, I think it is their responsibility to go out and educate themselves. There's so much information out there. I didn't know what an NFT was in May of 2021, and I've spoken on multiple stages since then. The information is out there if you want to find it, and if you want to succeed with your brand and bring it into this new generation of commerce, which is just happening. We can't stop it; it's happening. It is their responsibility to educate themselves. As far as consumers go, I have a bit of a hot take. I don't think we need to educate consumers. I think that the UX should be so good that consumers should not even know what they're using. They don't care. They don't care that it's on blockchain. They just want to have that loyalty experience. They want to have that purchasing experience. They want to have that Metaverse experience, but they don't even want to know what the word Metaverse means. They want to click a link. They get taken to this amazing online experience. They get to participate in whatever concert, event, shopping experience, and they leave happy. And they shouldn't have to know exactly what's going on under the hood.
So which brands or organizations are making the best go of convincing consumers to just be like, oh, that looks cool, I'm going to do that, and then engaging in a Web3 type experience without realizing that? Like, can you give me examples of who's doing a good job of that right now?
I think they still understand that they're doing like a Web3 experience. I think they're going to be building on it, but Anheuser-Busch and what they're doing with FIFA is really interesting. And their whole NFT projects, the Royals projects, the Budverse, the cans, stuff like that, I thought that was quite fascinating. So I think their consumers still understand that it's an on-chain product. There isn't really anyone yet that I've seen doing it in a way where you don't realize it at all. There will be soon. I think in the next year we're going to see a couple brands. They're going to do their own wallets, or they're going to partner with some kind of wallet where the consumer is not going to realize. They're just going to be able to get access to exclusive events, and then they're going to be able to trade that access with their friends and stuff like that. It's going to be more like that, but I haven't quite seen anyone do it to the extent where someone doesn't even know they're using it yet, but it's coming.
And so you don't think there needs to be any education for consumers when it comes to, I don't know, in order to hold my NFT or my tradable asset, I'm going to need a digital wallet, that kind of thing?
I don't think we're going to use words like that. I don't think we're going to use the word NFT. I feel like NFT is, like, as a term, is kind of dead. I'm not sure what we're going to call them in the future. It's kind of like just like domains in the 90s and the early 2000s. Now, new domains used to be this thing that you could buy, you could trade, they had value, and that was great. And now, like, you don't even really use the domain anymore. The domain name doesn't really, like, you need a domain name, it doesn't really matter. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think overall internet security education is really important for people, and I think there are so many, because it's all new, there are so many scams right now and stuff like that, but I think the user experience should be built in such a way that it's really hard to get scammed. I was looking at a wallet recently, the Sequence wallet that the Horizon guys did, and it was a multi-sig wallet, which I found so interesting because you could keep your keys if you wanted to, and you could keep 10 different sets of keys in 10 different wallets. But if you wanted to just sign in with your Google ID or your Apple ID or whatever it was, and you could just do that, and then they have a guard key for if you lose your information. So stuff like that where it makes onboarding, like, I don't want to have to print out my secret key, etch it into some metal, bury it in the ocean. Like, that's not That's not what's going to happen. Like my mom's not going to do that.
Yeah,
right?
I tried, didn't work. But again, to go back to your other question, which brands are doing it? So I think there's lots of big brands doing things around the metaverse. Give the example of Adidas, Nike, even brands like Ronaldo. With us doing the NFTs. I think that's great. It's a way of quantifying the interaction between the users and the brands. So if you think about partnerships like, branding a stadium or buying a spot on a F1 car, how do you quantify the investment of the return of investment? So it's very difficult. So we're doing something really interesting around that, which is called fan tokens. Essentially, we create tokens that are branded as, for example, Alpine, the F1 team. And that way, there's a utility associated with that token. The more tokens you have, the more incentives we give to the holders, and there is a sort of like an economy around the fans, and that I think is really great for quantifying and understanding how user fans interact with brands. If you put an ad in a stadium, how do you really quantify that? It's kind of difficult.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking in this discussion about bridging the gap from Web2 to 3, but should we also be looking at, considering these brands are making their money, and a lot of money, from Web2 and their physical presence, should we also be talking about how do we bridge the gap from Web3 back into Web2? Because there's a lot of, and I guess you could take the example of NFTs, utility is now being talked about. Well, it's got to be utility, because we can't just have these speculative profile pics. They've got to have community and utility around them. That utility, you would have to assume the first port of call for that would be, okay, how can I then leverage that token for use in Web2? So is part of the process of this bridge that we're building also have to be pushing traffic back into where, let's face it, everybody really is,
Well, I think that comes to when we talk about token-gated commerce and token-gated experiences, right? So the idea that if you have the token, then you can get into the concert, or you can get early access to a sale, or something along those lines. There are a bunch of brands that are doing that right now. Doodles, they were a Web3 brand, and they did a really interesting experience at NFT NYC and at South by Southwest, where if the South by Southwest one was pretty cool. If you had a doodle, you got this special badge, and you could tap it in all of the places in an installation. It was like an adult Disney, and you could get your doodle printed in the foam on your coffee, and you could get like all this really cool stuff that made it really feel like a community holders experience. So I think for the Web3 brands, we're going to be seeing a lot more like IRL token gated events, stuff like that. And I think for the Web2 brands, I don't want to hurt anyone by saying this, but the Taylor Swift concert tickets and how no one was able to get them, including me, I feel like Web3 would have had, like, there's a solution for that. There's an on-chain solution for what happened when the Ticketmaster tickets were like $93,000. And it's predatory. I just want to see her, like, I just want to hear her sing Midnights. Why do I have to pay $93,000 to do that? And it's not what she wanted, but it's because of these intermediaries. And there are like on-chain solutions for these sorts of problems that really take out the intermediary, and artists get more credit and money. Not that she needs more money, but smaller artists get more money from their live events, and it's just a more fair playing field. Like, why did some dad who only knows the lyrics to Shake It Off get tickets for the Taylor Swift concert? I know all of her albums by heart. Why am I not rewarded for that? And I think Web3 solves for a lot of that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we have some instruments here, and we were hoping you'd do like an impromptu performance for us. So
I'd like to add into that. So Web2, how do we bring Web3 into Web2? All right, so we made the case that Web2 is all about globalization and bringing people together. There's social brands like Twitter, Facebook, and so on. And Web3, we already made a good case scenario on financial transactions, right? So globalization brings everyone together, and then financial transactions in a decentralized network brings the power to the economy to everyone. So I think we have a good case of bringing financial transactions, decentralized financial transactions, to the Web2. Twitter is already doing something around that on the tipping benefits with the Bitcoin Lightning. I think Facebook tried, but they didn't. But there is that case where if we bring that to Web2, they will be able to interact with each other very seamlessly at some point. So
You raise some good points though, because obviously, I mean, I don't have to go too far back to bring up points in the news about, well, bad news that's really come out this year, I mean, FTX, et cetera, et cetera. So like, how do we, and a lot of the press that you get around Metaverse and Web3 is kind of just glossing over certain facts. How do we uncouple that conversation of FTX and Web3? I saw a great post where someone said, we're still here, we're still building, we're not affected by what happens in the cryptocurrency and the market or the trading arena. So how do we improve that conversation? I guess this sort of comes back to education in a way, but how do we uncouple and make sure that people are getting the right information about the possibilities in a positive way?
Yeah, I think that the first thing we need to notice here is that FTX was a centralized platform, right? When we think about the Metaverse and DeFi, everything's about decentralization and empowered to financial people, to everyone.
But everybody thinks of like Fortnite and Roblox when they think of the Metaverse, don't they? To a large degree.
Yeah, so I think definitely there's a lot of education to be done around decentralized and decentralization and self-custody as well. Not everyone has to think that a centralized exchange is where you need to hold your money or interact with Web3. You can actually do many other things. But I see the positive side of a bear market. So right now, everyone is not so focused on the pricing. When things are going up, everyone's like, oh, it's going up, I want to buy. Right now, the real builders are focusing on building, and we're supporting that 100%. So we have a VC arm that's recently launched a $500 million venture fund for the Web3 and the DeFi protocols on BNB. We are building a industry recovery fund, which is together with other industry players, not just Binance, which is currently valued around $2 billion to support those affected by FTX. So I think now is the time to educate and build rather than focus on pricing. Things will pass. FTX will pass. MTGOX passed, and we forget about it. So I don't think this is the end of anything. I think rather this is the beginning of a good building moment.
Well, and it's not like this is anything new either. Like with the Bernie Madoff thing, people lost millions of dollars to someone they trusted. And the stock market, it goes up and down. Like it's just, I think sometimes people think it's like this new crazy thing, and it's either I'm not educated enough to get involved, or like I'm like it's too weird or whatever, and it's like it's history repeating itself. It's really nothing new. There's new ways of doing things, and it's innovative, but all of the bad things that are happening has happened in similar ways in the past. So it doesn't really, like when people are like, oh well, like you can't build because this FTX thing happened. It's like, well, like the financial system is fine, and the Bernie Madoff thing happened.
But not a lot of trust in the
Not a lot of trust,
generally.
no. But like we still use money for commerce. We're still going to use Web3 for all of the great things that it's great for, including and not limited to commerce. And the FTX thing is not going to change that.
All right. Well, we've got a few minutes left, and I really like going to Q&As from the audience because this can kind of break the spell, Doug. So if anybody wants to fire a question, yes. Please.
Hello.
Hi.
So a bit of a provocative question. Everyone talks about Web3 in the Metaverse, but we rarely agree on what it is, right? And will we actually transition to a Web 4.0 is my question, with like neural interfaces, AI that's indistinguishable from humans? Or are we at the end of history? What's your opinion?
I mean, I said 3 minutes. Come on.
I think if we're at the end of history and the world's about to blow up, we should all go hug our loved ones, right? It's so hard to predict the future, but why not, right? I think Toby said something really interesting recently when he was saying Shopify isn't a Web 2 company or Web 3 company, it's a Web N company. And I think all of us need to be thinking about not just what we're doing right now and all of the impact that we're making now, but what we can make in the future. We shouldn't limit ourselves to Web 2 and Web 3. Web 3 is just an iteration of the internet, and we're going to keep iterating on that until, I don't know, we all die of global warming, I guess. We'll see. But I feel like that's not going to happen right away, so that sounds really cool.
That's a good answer. Yeah?
I was actually going to say, there is one case, you mentioned, you didn't see it. There's one case so far that has been successful in transitioning people to Web3 without actually calling it an NFT and without actually having a seamless experience, which is Reddit. I don't know if you know about the NFT collection by Reddit. They called it a digital collectible. You actually got it. You pay by credit card. You made it. You co-created it, like through the artists, and then you had the possibility to put it in your wallet if you wanted to. But if not, it just stays on the Reddit site. But yeah, I don't know if you.
Thank you for saying that. I completely forgot about Reddit. You're absolutely right. And what Starbucks is doing is very interesting as well, although they haven't quite. I don't know if it's launched yet. I tried to sign up and it's only in the States.
So their strategy actually was to put it out there in the public and then see what the public says and then actually make the project, which was even more clever, but that's, yeah.
Great,
Anybody
thank
else?
you.
No? All right, well, thank you very much for the time, and I hope we've sparked some more conversations out there, and if you have any questions after the panel, just grab any one of us, and yeah, good to chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.